everyone, welcome to Red Snapper. My name's MJ, and this is Snap or Pass, the series where we look at the brand new cards coming to Marvel Snap each week. This week it's Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross. He's a 2/2. When your opponent ends a turn with unspent energy, draw a card with 10 or more power. We're going to be looking at the card itself, the mechanics, all of the cool fun details with it, and some spicy deck ideas. I'll leave my thoughts on the actual card and where I think it's shit or not to the very end. Obviously, we'll answer the question Snap or Pass. We'll also look at the spotlight caches that he's in, and you can use the chapters below to skip to a section you want to see. As we said, let's look at the spotlight caches first of all. This is not a bad week, kind of. So in terms of value, I've got one Series 4 card here with Nebula. Nebula has appeared a number of times before, so I think most players have had a decent amount of opportunities to get her. However, Blink, this is her first time in Spotlight Caches since she was a Season Pass card. So lots of players who didn't get that and wanted Blink will probably be going in on this week. Other than that, it's not the best week. I mean, Nebula is actually a good card. Blink is a good card. Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross. We're gonna be talking about him, guys. Don't you worry. Anyway, it's kind of middling, kind of good if you didn't get that season pass. But let's talk about the mechanics around Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross himself. I mean, I'm probably just gonna call him like General Ross from now on, because like Thaddeus, like the first time I mentioned this card in my leaks video, I wasn't even pronouncing it right. This is not a name that we have in the UK. I'm sorry. And when I've read comics, he's only ever been General Ross. Anyway. The mechanics of the card. The archetypes that I think he'll fit into is basically just one, pretty much. I think he's almost exclusively a Skaar card. You know, the Skaar deck, that one. I think it's pretty much exclusively that. I have put Arishem here. Maybe he might fit in Arishem. Kind of, it's the only other place I can maybe see him working, because he has an extraordinarily niche ability. He obviously draws a card, but it has to is a specific card, so you have to put enough types of those cards, which in this instance is cards above 10 power. You have to put enough of those in your deck to make it worth playing Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, General Ross. But also you have to consider what spot is Thaddeus Ross taking in your deck. Who isn't in your deck because you're playing Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross instead. I said I wasn't going to say his name. Anyway. You can trigger him multiple times. If your opponent doesn't spend their energy, you can draw multiple cards. And he will draw cards like Starbrand, but won't draw cards like Gore. Now, Starbrand is coming in the next season, so it's a little bit early to be talking about Starbrand, really. But he's a card who starts with less than 10 power, but at the start of the game, he can go above 10 power. So that sort of becomes his power. So he will be able to draw that. But Gore, whilst it shows you a preview as his power, he does actually still have the -1, so I'm just kind of wanted to highlight the difference between permanent effects and ongoing, right? Fine. Pros. This is the cheapest card draw card in the entire game, excluding Nico Minoru. I feel like whenever I say that a card is the cheapest of something at what they do, I am the cheapest at what I do, and what I do is, it's not Wolverine, is no. I feel like I'm always adding an addendum that actually Nico Minoru already does this for one cost. But, you know, Nico is not, you can't rely on any one of Nico's specific abilities. If your deck can utilize a few of those abilities, then she's obviously great. But this is coming off track. We're talking about Nico Minoru, a good card, and we should be talking about General Ross. Sorry, preview for my Snap or Pass verdict there. This next thing I think genuinely might be the best thing about General Ross. His presence on the board might make your opponent change the cards they were going to play in order to prevent you getting the additional card draw. So they basically might make a suboptimal play that isn't towards their strategy or their play line that they had, but it prevents you from drawing. And actually, is that sort of better than drawing a card? If you've knocked your opponent off course, that might end up being better. And drawing cards is very strong, and in the Skaar deck, brilliant. In the Skaar deck, drawing something like Skaar is game winning. If General Ross can give you that Skaar, that can win you the game. But conversely, the cons. He really only fits in one deck, and if you're playing him there, it means you're not playing Armor or Zabu or something else you would have played early. So instead of the General Ross on turn 2, maybe you played an Armor on turn 2, which is basically your defense against Shang-Chi and your defense against getting killed. So that, you know, Armor is already a very good 2-drop in that deck. Or maybe you just don't have many lower costed cards in there, and maybe just the Zabu represents more value than General Ross. Also consider, why wouldn't you just play an extra 10 cost card instead of General Ross? If General Ross would have drawn you a card, you just, in your mind, you go, okay, in this deck, instead of General Ross, I'm going to play Aero. And every time you draw Aero, you go, well, that's this is what I drew instead of General Ross. You're not playing General Ross for the 2 power. So there's that kind of consideration. And the ability is entirely in your opponent's control. It depends on whether they have ended their turn with unspent energy. There's nothing you control about that. There's obviously a few things you can manipulate with 1 or 2 cards, but yeah, it feels bad that the card draw is in your opponent's control. And finally, it's slow tempo. It's 2 powers, 2/2. You're not excited about that. That does not really push your win condition forward all that much. So yeah, moving on to the locations. There are a couple of good locations. Dream Dimension might mean that you draw a card on turn 5, because if all cards cost 1 more, it makes it more difficult for your opponent to fill in their energy curve with like a 1-costed card, because 1-costed cards don't exist in Dream Dimension. Well, they do actually, if they had like Mjolnir, Wasp, etc. But it's harder for them to really maximise that. I mean, it could be that they had a 4-cost card and it's become 5, so it's not foolproof, of course. Atalan might be alright. It shuffles all the cards into your deck. That's good for a few reasons. 1, you might have the opportunity to draw a card, and 2, your opponent might have less options, and so slightly more likely that they are going to end a turn with unspent energy. Asgard Besieged, I've said is good just simply because General Ross could die, and he's a bad card. No, just generally because it's an extra 10 power body on the board, which you're only playing General Ross in 1 deck, so that's beneficial for the Skaar deck. Same reason for Monster Island. Couple of bad locations though. Triskelion, interestingly, is probably going to give your opponent more options, and so they are slightly more likely to be able to fill out their energy curve. And Elysium, yeah, I mean, if everything's cost 1 less, again, easier to fill out curves. I mean, it could actually have, in some instances, the same effect as Dream Dimension, and actually it gives them slightly too much discount, and they can't actually possibly spend all of it, but we'll see. Let's talk about the counters. There are quite a few here that are somewhat significant. I've added Quicksilver as a counter here. Now, Quicksilver in this instance is emblematic of Wiccan, really. I mean, I could have put Wiccan instead. But if they're playing a Wiccan deck, or basically specifically planning and building their deck around ensuring that they have a good and efficient energy curve, then you're never drawing cards. Or at least probably not. After they play Wiccan, all bets are sort of off. But yeah, definitely going to be much harder for you. Scorpion. This again is only really considering the fact that General Ross is probably only going in 1 deck, the Skaar and Surtur deck, and it might reduce the power of your 10 cost cards, your 10 power cards in hand to 9, which means you're not getting the energy discount on Skaar, or the extra power on Surtur. Cassandra Nova, horrific, because this is actually going to take your 10 power cards down to 9, and that could be things like Cull Obsidian, it could be the Aero, and that means you might even just block General Ross's ability to draw cards whatsoever. Mobius, again, only really considering because General Ross is in 1 deck, so he's going to make Skaar cost full price, which is semi-shutting the deck down. And Black Widow is literally going to stop you drawing cards with that Widow's Kiss, so they won't even mind if they finish a turn with unspent energy if they've activated and given you the kiss. But of course you obviously can just play it down. But at the end of that turn or whatever. I don't know what I'm saying. Fine. Synergies. Sorry. Iceman is a synergy because he's going to increase the cost of a card in their hand, isn't he? That's what he does, guys. Think. Sorry. Sorry. Sarta, we've spoken about this relentlessly, but yes, this is the deck that General Ross fits in, and he's alongside Skaar in that deck. And Red Hulk, of course, if you're playing strategies where you're trying to have your opponent not fulfill their energy, maybe you are leaning into it a bit more with cards like Iceman. I don't even know what other kinds of energy manipulation for opponent there is. Like gamming it up with, I don't know, like Master Mold centered. I don't know. Anyway, Red Hulk, yeah, it's like similar, isn't it? It's like because the same spoiler, yeah. General Ross becomes, isn't it, Red Hulk. So, right, let's look at the decks. This first one is a budget deck. We like to start with a budget deck for either newer players or lower collection level players. I haven't even given this deck an archetype. I'm not really sure what it is. It's called No Skaar Skaar. So this is a Skaar deck, but without Skaar. And obviously, because it's a budget deck, which means there's only one Series 5 card, which is General Ross, it means we haven't got Surtur either. How on earth do you win with that? You try and go a slight zoo-ish route alongside a few ways to semi-trick out your kind of Skaar, your fake Skaar. And that's in the way of She-Hulk and Sasquatch. Giving you two options there. You either skip turn 5 as much as you can and get the reduction on She-Hulk, or you play loads of cards on turn 5 and get the reduction for Sasquatch. Or whenever it may be. Maybe it's early in the game and you can double dip. Play 3 1-cost cards on turn 3, play your Sasquatch on turn 4, skip turn 5, play She-Hulk with something on turn 6. You've got the Enchantress in here for a little bit of counter ability and reactivity, and it also takes off the power of your Typhoid Mary too. And you've also got the other nice little synergy here of a Tumor and Hood. Hood can destroy a card, get rid of your Hood. So you can play your Demon down, and you can also play Armor next to a Tumor once you've eventually done that too. Cool. Right, this deck is a Premium Plus deck. This is a Skaar with Skaar. In fact, this is, yeah, I don't know why Captain America Sam Wilson is in here. Straight up, legitimately, don't know why he's here. Probably even a mistake that I've put him in, but other than that, there's a pretty normal Surtur or Skaar deck. Maybe replace the rogue Captain America Sam Wilson there with Zabu, as we discussed, or something else. Nebula is even, you know, alright in these decks. Give that extra bit of control over your opponent. Or Iceman. Might as well just stick in a natural synergy here. Anyway, this is an alarm. This is an alarm that I didn't turn off on my phone, so let's turn that off. Sorry about that. You got your Thunderbolt Ross in here. Your early game also looks like Armor and an accidental Captain America Sam Wilson, or Zabu if you actually replace it. You can stick down some defensive capability if you don't draw your Surtur, so you can play the Cosmo instead. But then other than that, you've got plenty of 10 power cards to draw from General Ross. We've stacked our deck with 5 of them. And of course, really important that we draw the Skaar. Yeah, probably going to be his best home. I'm not sure if it's better than the existing decks though. So the final deck for you, something a bit more interesting. This is a surprise General Ross deck. So we're playing General Ross, but your opponent isn't going to quite know why you're playing it or what's going on. We have got cards that increase the power of our 9 power cards to be above 9 and thus 10. So we have got a couple of natural 10s. We've got the Sasquatch and the Cull Obsidian. Other than that, we're relying on the buffs from cards like America Chavez, which we'd have to get quite lucky with, to be fair. But we have got Okoye in here as well. We've got Fastos. We've got ways to duplicate these effects with Grandmaster. And hopefully these will hit something like Sentry, or Gilgamesh, or Mockingbird. And yeah, they'll become 10 power. And then your opponent will end a turn with unspent energy, and you will draw the cards. Oh, God. Saying it out loud, I already hate it. Now, why have we got Sentry in here? Because, actually, we kind of might just try to block right. We might try and block right and play Sentry out, and then that's cool. But if we don't block right, like if you look at your opening hand or your early game and you're like, okay, I don't actually have a way to block right, just ignore right. Don't go for the win on it. You could actually play a Tumour in this deck, maybe swap a Tumour out for Colour Obsidian, go that route instead. You have another additional way to destroy the Void. That's probably better, actually. But hear me out. If you do leave it there and you do just ignore right, it's an extra tick on your Mockingbird. Mockingbird also gets discounted by Squirrel Girl here. Squirrel Girl also works with a Colour Obsidian. So there's a few nice little synergies here. And you can do, again, a sort of Zoo-ish style play as you could with the other deck with the Sasquatch. But ultimately, I still think this is bad. So, yeah. Now, I haven't mentioned it thus far. If you're new around these parts, please subscribe and like the video. And hey, turn on notifications if you really love the content. Anything you can do like that massively helps out my channel. So especially if you're like a lurker watcher, you come back every week, but you've not taken that plunge and hit the subscribe button yet, it would really help me out. Okay, it's time for the star ratings. Guys, 1.5 stars overall. Guys, I'm sorry, I'm just not a fan. Fun, 2 stars. I don't think he's even that fun. When you drop in tempo, I think it's generally not fun. You're setting something up. You're like, okay, something fun is about to happen. The fun thing that is about to happen with General Ross is you might draw a card. You might not, right? Nothing might happen. Like, so, yeah. Within the archetype, even usually this is the one, guys. Usually cards fit in an archetype, and at least they're good in their archetype. I'm not sure if you even want him in there. Like, if you don't want, why is my voice cut so high pitch? If you don't even want him in the one deck he's made for, if you don't even want him in the one deck, I've actually gone lightheaded. If you don't even want him in the one deck he's made for, what are we even doing? What are we doing here, sheeple? See, I've gone completely lightheaded, now I'm lost my mind. I feel like there's hairs all over my nose. And thus, from a competitive standpoint, I mean, I was tempted to give him a 2 or 2.5 on this, because maybe I'll be surprised. But honestly, I'm thinking like 1.5. I just don't think you even need to draw the card. Like, okay, let's say you put him in the deck. Let's say he triggers. Let's say you draw a card. If that isn't Skaar or something, you know, I just don't think you even need him. Like, the Skaar deck is already good, right? It's already a great deck. Recently had Ares and stuff. Like, it is already a good deck. I don't think you even need to draw the cards, generally speaking. So is he a Snapple part? Guys, it's been pretty obvious. I've been obviously utterly down on this card. I think it's one of the worst cards to release recently. It's a pass. It's a pass. Like, okay, guys, I would encourage you to go and check out the other content creators who make Snap or Pass style videos. So you got Drewski with Snap or Skip, and you got Tucker with Buy or Bust. Go and watch their videos, see if they have any different takes to me, because clearly I'm down on the card, and maybe they're better. But anyways, the reason I'm mentioning other creators specifically at this point is because Tucker mentions at the end of his videos that everything is his opinion. You know, you're best off waiting and seeing to see what happens with the card. And people, content creators, can be wrong. Of course I could be wrong. I'm like the most wrong. I'm an absolute wrong un. So like, I could be wrong, guys. This is just my opinion. All of the information I ever give in these videos is going to be my opinion. I mean, unless I'm stating facts. Like, he's a 2-2, that is a fact. But it's just my opinion, okay? But I think it's hot. I just think it's hot garbage. I think it's one of the worst cards to release recently. And that's not, you know, sometimes card games need bad cards, but I don't think you want to spend your resources on this one. I have to say. But hey, we'll see. Mate, I could be dead wrong. And he's like, turns out to be a fantastic inclusion to this deck. And great. But we'll see. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, guys. And I'll see you next time on this video series. It's like I forgot the name. I'll see you next time on Snap or No Snap.